Hello, friends. Hello once again, my friends. Welcome to another amazing episode of Improv and Magic with me, your friend LD Madera. There's probably some of you out there who may have been asking yourselves, I wonder when LD is finally going to talk to more magicians. Well, good news, my friends. That day is today. My guest is an amazing magician who is known and beloved all over the world. She is Carissa Hendrix. Of course, you may know her by her wonderful character, Lucy Darling. Carissa is an award-winning magician, circus stunt performer, and fire eater. She was awarded Stage Magician of the Year twice by the world-famous Magic Castle. She was a recipient of the Carlton Award from the Magic Circle in the UK, and also received Magical Valentine's Magician of the Year Award from Vanishing Magic Magazine and Remarkable Magic. And those are just a few of the many awards she's received over the years. Not only that, Carissa is also in the Guinness Book of World Records for her fire-eating stunt, Longest Torch Teething, and for 24 fire torches ignited using electricity through the human body. Could this person be any more amazing? Carissa has appeared on the cover of various prominent magic magazines, such as Genie, Vanish Magazine, and Penguin Monthly, and has also been on many well-known television shows like Masters of Illusion and Penn and Teller Fool Us. I'll admit, I was a bit nervous going into this interview because Carissa is a big star in magic and, well, I really didn't want to screw this up. But I can say happily that Carissa was incredibly kind and very, very sweet to me. It was like talking to an old friend. I cherished every moment of this interview, and I hope you do too. Before we get this episode started, I have to give a really big thank you to the person who helped make this possible, my friend John Sturck, National President of the Society of American Magicians. John, if you're listening, thank you so much, my friend. This would not have been possible without your help. All right, my friends, enough stalling. Let's do this. Ladies and gentlemen, here is my guest, the wonderful Carissa Hendrix. Ladies and gentlemen, I am beyond excited that I am talking to the one and only Carissa Hendrix. Hi, Carissa. How are you?
I'm great. How are you?
I am absolutely over the moon fantastic. I mean, I'm a fan of yours, and I just cannot thank you enough for taking the time to talk to me today.
You are very sweet. This is extremely flattering.
You are talking to me right now on a ship, right?
Y- yes, I'm on my way back from where were we just? Turks and Caicos on Virgin's Scarlet Lady. I'm the magician on the ship at the moment. Just did a couple of shows yesterday. Just watched the other magician's show. Having a blast. It is the best contract. I'm obsessed.
You know, I've been following you, and you are really busy. I mean, it's like show after show after show after show with you. Do you enjoy that? Do you love that busy performance lifestyle?
Yes, I do, and I have. It has been my preference. Save for the year I spent during the pandemic living with Miranda, my acting partners on the online show. I've been on the road full time for 6 years. So I haven't had a permanent address really for 6 years. So it's just been gig to gig to gig to gig. Um, and I love it. But I'll be honest, in the last 4 months, it has a little bit caught up with me because the trouble with having no permanent address is that the your instinct is to just make sure there's something booked every week. So it's Castle, House of Cards, um, Chicago Magic Lounge, and then you do a couple of theaters in New York, and then you do this other thing, and then a couple months on the ship, and then a residency over here, and what you forget is like, oh yeah, the body needs rest. um, So yeah, so that's my new thing I've got to add to the calculations of like, oh, I love the touring, I love the show, very grateful, but also how do I fit in days where there's nothing to do?
Well, what is it that keeps you going? I mean, as you're constantly on the road and touring and performing, what is it that keeps you motivated to just keep powering through and just to keep doing it?
Well, I think the thing for me is that this was like the dream. You know, I grew up in a small town in northern Saskatchewan. I started my show business career in Calgary, Alberta, with some amazing performers who really primarily focused on the corporate market, which was great market. But I knew that I was more interested in more traditional theatrical performing. I definitely wanted to be part of the magic world and get the respect from my peers and, you know, be part of the mucky muck. And you know, I'm not really motivated by awards or anything like that, or even money. But I just wanted to like work the big showrooms and have a show that I'm proud of that, you know, really moves people. And, you know, that kind of started happening for me like five, 4 or 5 years ago. And so what keeps me going is that this was the whole point. This was it. This was what I wanted the whole time. And so it feels very silly to like get what you want and then be like, ugh, never mind. Just kidding. Like, no, of course I'm gonna keep doing this. This is the whole point. And there's so much still to be discovered with the character and with magic. You know, I found when I was doing more sideshow and circus, which I love, that it just didn't stimulate me intellectually in the way that magic does. I mean, it is impossible to run out of things to know about magic. Whereas I found like in other forms of entertainment, it didn't take long for me to go, okay, yeah, I sort of get the basics of this, and now I'm bored.
Well, let's start with the beginning with you, Carissa. You mentioned that you grew up in Canada. What was growing up like for you?
Sure. So we grew up in it was myself and my younger brother. My parents had us very young. I believe my mother had me at 17, quite young. So we were just like it was babies raising babies. So we were always doing our best, and there wasn't always a ton of money around. But we were, you know, we had family. There's a lot of family up north, and so it's a lot of that like northern Canadian culture of like, you know, family first and potlucks, and you go to church, and you know, your life is very rural in a towny way. And then we moved to Saskatoon, which is a little bigger, and then my dad got a job in Calgary, which is like quote unquote a big city. You know, now that I'm in America, I don't know how comfortable I feel thinking of that as like a big city. Still, when I go back home, it feels like a small town now to me, but it is a big city. And now we're separated from that culture, from that support from our family, but we're still like fairly low income. And my dad got a better job, and so now we have more money but less support. And so the interesting thing about that is that your extracurriculars as a young person are really dependent on like what options you have where you can go volunteer. Like we didn't have like swim instruction money or like you know, jujitsu money. It was if you wanted to do an after school thing, it was going to have to be free. And so I volunteered a lot, and like did this program called Art of Youth, which was this amazing thing put on by Youth Volunteer Corps. And you could go and volunteer to be an usher at a theater, and they would take these kids, these quote unquote disadvantaged kids, out to like paint murals, and they taught us how to juggle, and they had a magician come in and teach us a couple of tricks. And I love that program, you know, but the whole focus around it and programs like that is like, hey, you're gonna make it, you know, you're gonna really be something someday. It's you are so smart and you are so clever, and don't let the world get you down. And that's kind of the energy of it, rather than just like, here's how to paint, right? Like there's like this whole other attitude around it. And I'll think also because it's Canada, right? Canada's very has a different kind of social safety net and sort of different kinds of support. And so it was interesting growing up in that environment because, you know, parents are really young. They don't really know what they're doing. They were as much kids as we were, is how it felt. It felt more like four weirdos, like just trying to make it through rather than like parents and kids sometimes, which was fun and great. and silly, but also like kind of often little rudderless.
Was there anything in particular that got you interested in wanting to be a performer specifically?
You know, I think if anyone had met me at like 12 or 13, I would have been voted least likely to get into show business. I
Really?
took drama, yeah, I took drama class, but I never did well. I never got any part I auditioned for in any school play. It's just not my thing. My grandmother was a seamstress. So when we'd go to Grandpa Hendrix's house, I would go into the sewing room and I would just like make weird costumes, and that was like more my vibe. And I liked a lot of things about performing. Like I remember watching David Copperfield specials and Max Maven on television when I was really little, sitting next to my dad, and my dad, enjoyed magic. And during the commercial breaks, he'd look at me and go, "Hey, how do you think he did that?" And I would, I'd be like 6. I'd make up some crazy story about magnets and thread, and it was all, none of it was right, obviously. And my dad would go, "Oh yeah, I think that's it. I think he got it." And that little bit of approval was so satisfying. Like there's this puzzle that could be known. And so there were aspects of entertainment that, the costuming, and magic and all these things that were really cool. But the truth is, I had no interest in show business. What happened was during Art of Youth and like learning some tricks as a kid, I could do a little bit of magic, I could juggle, and I could spin poi, and I could eat fire. Those are like skills I had learned by the age of 16. At 16, I get kicked out of the house. I need money. I got to get an apartment. I got to not starve to death. And so my mentor at the time, one of a few mentors I had collected through volunteering, Marcia Mido, was the entertainment director for Screamfest, which was a haunted house thing. And this is like, I think I get kicked out at the end of September. And she goes, "Listen, we do 28 days of programming. If you can do 5 shows a night, 5 10-minute shows, they can all be the same show. I can pay you $50 a night." And $50 a night for a kid going to school for like a 2 3 hour commitment, especially at that time, because like, that's almost 20 years ago when I was 16. No, it's literally 20 years ago. It's 20 years, coming up 20 years. Was a lot of money. That was enough to get me through school. So, yeah, I'm gonna throw an act together. So I did an act where I spun poi and I ate fire and I did a card trick, and it was good awful, like absolutely horrendous as an act. But I needed the money, and starvation is a good motivator. Fear is a good motivator. So, every night I'd go between every show, and every night I'd go back to, I was staying with my friends in one of their little guest rooms for a couple of months, and I would write and I would work on it, and I'd watch videos of other performers on YouTube, and I would try to figure out what worked, and I'd go back and I'd do jokes, and some jokes would get laughs and some jokes wouldn't. And by the end of those 28 days, I had 10 pretty decent minutes. But what I had also done is I had performed on this like main stage in front of all of the entertainers in Calgary, because Marshall hired lots of other people. There were roving magicians there. There was other acts there. And they're like, "Who's this new kid?" They don't know I'm 16. "Who's this new kid doing these shows, getting good really fast?" And so a few of them came up to me, some magicians came up to me, and they were like, "Hey, do you want to maybe like be a magician's assistant? Or can you do balloon animals? Can you still walk?" And I'm like, "Oh my God, absolutely. I can do all of that." I could not do that. I had never walked on stilts in my life. I never even seen a stilt walker. I had no idea about balloon animals, but they told me they had lots of work for me at Christmas, and I wanted that work. And so the Halloween money got me, obviously through a lot of November. I bought some balloons. I built a pair of stilts with stuff that I bought at Home Depot. I remember cutting the wood at the Home Depot at the wood cutting place because I didn't have a workshop, and like sitting in the parking lot and hammering these stilts together. I had never seen a stilt walker in real life when I taught myself how to stilt walk. Never. Had never seen a stilt walker.
Really?
Yeah, never had seen a stilt walker. Later, I did it that winter, forgot how, and then bought a pair of bouncy stilts like a couple years later. And at the time, by that time, I got into circus coach, and I remember him trying to teach me how to walk on stilts on these like bouncy stilts, which were so different, and thinking like, man, this is so much easier with an instructor. But I didn't know what the standard was for balloons. So I show up to this first gig doing like Mario's and Pink Panthers and stuff. Everyone else is making poodles. I don't know what the standard is, and so now I show up at Christmas with all these other performers. I look like a savant, but really I'm just trying not to die. I'm just trying not to starve to death. And so then, yeah, a lot of those guys like put me on the roster as like a good, and I made the costumes for the still walking thing because I could sew. And so, those gigs turned into more gigs, and the money was good. It paid better than working at McDonald's, and it meant I could focus on my studies, but it was never supposed to be the thing, right? It was always a temporary solution until I like really figured out where I was supposed to be. And eventually, it occurred to me like trying to do these other things. Became a preschool teacher. I did all this other stuff. I just woke up one day and was like, oh no, this is what I'm for. Like it was never the goal. It was never some big dream, but it's not working at McDonald's. It's what I'm supposed to be doing.
I love the idea of saying yes to something, not knowing whether or not you can do it.
Well, that's the old vaudeville thing, right? Like, and I didn't know that. I'd never studied vaudeville, but I think I was born a vaudevillian because every story you ever read about old school vaudeville, I mean, I think this is Johnny Thompson's story too. It's like somebody came to him, he was like a harmonica player, and somebody came to him and they're like, "You have a magic show, right?" And he's like, "Oh yeah, of course." Whatever the client wants, you can do it. And then you as long as you got a week, you can do it. So yeah, it's just that lots of people have that story. It's that old vaudeville trait of what do you need? No problem, give me a week.
Well, coincidentally, I mean, I'm also a huge mega David Copperfield fan, and I've listened to a lot of his interviews, and he also talks about how when he first moved to New York, about how he starved a lot, and him starving was actually a great big motivator for him. So, how important do you think it is to have that tenacity when you're a performer?
I think there are lots of good ways to motivate people, and starvation is probably the least pleasant, despite its effectiveness. Like, I think if there's lots of young people I see getting into magic who are really passionate about the material and they love being on stage, and that is also like a completely legitimate way to get into it. I don't want anyone to need to be a performer. I think I think if you have options, that's better. Uh, for me, it was a good motivator, but I think I would have enjoyed it a lot more at the beginning if I didn't have to book the gigs, if I didn't have to be good, if the stakes weren't so high. So yeah, it benefited Copperfield, it benefited me, but there are much more pleasant ways. There are way more pleasant ways to do things.
Well, I mean, now it's also such a different time because now we have this crazy thing called the internet where, now we have all these things like social media and TikTok. And, now there's all these avenues where people can get famous without having to starve. Do you see this new internet age as like a really good thing for performers?
I think it is both a good thing and a bad thing. I think in a lot of ways it has democratized show business in a way, right? Like you have your phone, you can make content. It has limited some of the gatekeeping in show business. Like I was very lucky early on that some of my mentors could break me into the industry, and I got a lot of attention and protection from people who were fairly influential. And I mean, that's kind of been the story of my entire career is that, I was an acrobat, not a good one, but an acrobat. And I managed to like get in with like three influential coaches who had the time to really teach me. And sideshow, the same thing. I had good mentors in sideshow. I had good mentors um, all along the way. And when I jumped ship from sideshow into magic, there was amazing mentorship to be had in the magic world for me as well. So I've been very lucky. And I think it's much easier to get access to people through social media, to get good mentorship, and also to like, get out there, get your name out there with social media. But the other problem is those are not, um, they don't translate in the way that people think. So there's a lot of people putting a lot of time into in show business who want to be comedians or want to be magicians or want to be stage performers, put a lot of time into social media, and then they realize, oh, the skills that are required to make good online content are actually quite divorced from the skills required to do a good stage show. And also, unless you've crafted your audience in a very specific way, the people who watch you online are not necessarily going to buy tickets to your show. Like, I know people, I won't name names, but I was part of a project where we were helping do some writing for someone who has millions of TikTok followers. And we did some writing and we did a project for them, and they tried to sell tickets and they couldn't sell tickets for this tour because a million TikTok followers did not translate into a million butts in the seats. It translated into no butts in the seats. People really liked consuming it in that format, and they had no interest in seeing the live version. Now, that's not true for everyone. If you're selling personality and the personality they're going to see on stage is the same personality, they'll come see it live. But if what you're doing is like exposing magic or doing like really amazing, like short little bite-sized pieces of magic, that's what they want from you. They don't want a long form show necessarily. So it's good, but it's also, I think it can be a big time suck for certain people.
Yeah, I definitely hear you. It's also interesting how like so much of the magic that you see being advertised and promoted is what you said, these little bite-sized little moments of magic, which definitely became a big thing during the pandemic, obviously. Do you see that as like something useful, creating like bite-sized little pieces of magic? Do you think that's good for the craft, or do you think that magic should still be something where it's carefully woven and a lot more thought is put into it?
There's a great Eugene Berger quote about how the House of Magic has many rooms. Um, and I think that there's lots of really like Xavier Mortimer's videos online and a few other people. Jackie Yu doing a great job of making these really visual, lovely pieces of magic that are very digestible. Misty Lee did a whole thing on YouTube, a whole YouTube series called Unicorn Wednesdays, which I thought was like just a really wonderful display of magic. I mean, it can be done very well, and it has been done really well. Um, I don't think it hurts magic necessarily. The issue is for me is that, or not the issue, but the interesting thing I'm noticing is that if you what you do when you're getting into magic, what your focus is gonna that's the thing in your brain you're working on. And so if you're working on a trick, you only have to do correctly once for the camera. That is not super repeatable. That is very angly, and that's what you're really good at. You're really good at like learning new things really quickly and doing them for the camera and doing them well and getting attention. Amazing. That's not what a stage show is. A stage show is doing like the show I'm doing here on Virgin. I'm working in the round with a mirror behind me.
Oh,
It has to
wow.
be perfect. And I also have a balcony. So they're above me, they're below me, they're behind me, they're to my sides. I have nowhere to hide angle wise. And every show, the audience is completely different because the crowds that want to come on the Virgin voyages to Miami and Turks and Caicos are very different than the ones that want to come with us to the Dominican Republic. So, and also it changes based on who's got, like, is it a weekend voyage? Is it a weekday voyage? That's going to change the demographic, and you've got to be ready to cater to that. And it has to be perfect because everyone here has a phone on them and they're sneakily filming clips of my show. So I can't flash. I can't make a mistake. I can't make a mistake from any angle at any time ever. And sometimes my show is at 1 o'clock in the afternoon on a Tuesday. 1 o'clock in the afternoon on a Tuesday, you have to do a perfect show with no mistakes that rocks the house down. It's a very different skill set than making conceiving of and making a really beautiful, fantastic, amazing 1 minute 30-second clip where you do the trick once and then the trick is burnt for you. You can't do that trick online again tomorrow, right? That trick doesn't exist. You might as well throw it away. You got to buy a new thing from Penguin or from Vanishing Ink and you got to start over. Those are different skill sets, and that's fine. But it is the same as somebody who did mentalism their whole life being like, I'm going to be an amazing card cheat. You're gonna Yeah, some of those skills are transferable, but most of them are not. You're pretty much starting over. And for me, it's all these people doing this beautiful online work, and then they want me to recommend them for the ship, and I'm like, you don't have a show. I adore you, you're amazing, what you do is great, but I cannot recommend you for a ship. You have nothing to offer them. You don't have material, and everything you do have is angly, and you only ever did it once. So what's your show? It's tough, and I direct for a lot of other magicians, and I do lots of coaching and lots of writing. And the reason I'm saying this is because there are three people right now that I'm having this exact conversation with, and I'm watching them go through these existential crises of they work so hard on this online content, and it really is amazing. They're incredible, but it hasn't translated to work in the way they were hoping. And so now they're going, okay, I got to start over. And some of these people are turning 30 and they're like, I don't have any live performing skills. I forgot to acquire live performing skills. And it's hard to explain to them, like, yeah, it's going to just hurt for like 2-3 years while you sort of figure out who you are on stage.
Do you, and I know this is a dorky question, but I'll ask it anyway. Do you remember the first trick that you learned and got really good at and performed in front of people and got that rush that you get when you fool someone for the first time?
Oh, that's such a good question. Unfortunately, I don't. I don't remember because it was all really um, how do I explain this? For me, my introduction to show business, because it was about it being a job, everything was, all the performing skills were ancillary. The goal was be a purchasable product and a palatable show. So I was putting tricks in the show that I thought would be really fun to watch, that would create good images that I could put back on my website. I was trying to think of things that the description of them would be great. I was really thinking more of the sales of it all. So I didn't really focus early on the joy of fooling people. I really feel like I had two births as a magician. I had an early love of magic that turned into this, job in fast food, the fast food of magic, where I was a magician's assistant. I was doing walk around. I was doing things, but none of those tricks made me excited. They were just about doing my job. They were just about flipping burgers and selling slinging hash. Uh, and then I fell in love with magic separately and came back to those tricks and understood them differently and saw the value in them, and then kind of experienced that thing of like, wow, I just fooled like this person. I injured this person almost, like they loved it, but it I can see how it like scraped the inside of their brain up a little bit. A couple days ago I did my show here on the ship, and then I was just out for dinner. There's some beautiful restaurants here, and I was just eating. And it's such a social ship that if I go take myself out to dinner and I have a book, I'm only going to read 9 pages before someone talks to me, which is lovely. And so there were these wonderful firefighters here, and they started talking to me, and they found out I was the magician on the ship, and they wanted to see a trick, and I don't have any props, and so I'm improvising stuff with things lying around, and then I did some Georgia Magnet stuff for them. So I'm pulling out of the backlog of my material. Like Georgia Magnet stuff is from when I did my touring 10-1 in my early to mid 20s. Like that's old in my head, and I'm watching them sort of figure out this woman has nothing. This person has showed up with no material. She she's taking things out of our wallets and doing magic with them. Oh my god! And you could just see it like scramble their little brains, and I mean it's so satisfying. And that feeling you're talking about gets more satisfying for me every year that passes. But there was none of it for me at the beginning because it was just about do a good enough job to get hired again so that we have money to pay rent. Like that whole experience you're talking about, that's all very new to me because I didn't even think to perceive it.
Hmm. I gotcha. I gotcha. What was it about? Because you're also known for your work in circus performing. What is it about the work in circus performing that really appeals to you?
Ooh, I Circus is a really wonderful art form because it is so compelling to watch. It's always a story, whatever story you add to it, the story that's sort of happening organically is that here is a human form that is capable of so much. And I also have a human form. And if I really tried, my human form could do what that human form can do, whether it's juggling or acrobatics or aerial. These are stories about perseverance and about overcoming things and about human capability. And so then you put a story on top of that story, right? So it's already the reality of, wow, that person is hanging from their hair, or wow, that person is hanging upside down by their toes, or that person is doing a backflip. Those are connective moments because you know that your body sometimes has trouble walking up 3 flights of stairs. And so there is a connective thing about seeing what, humans are capable of and therefore you're capable of. And I loved that. I loved the empathy of Circus. And on top of that, you can make interesting body shapes, and it's dance beyond dance sometimes, where you're doing these impossible moves, and it's so beautiful. And then again, we get to like costume and add secondary story and all of that, and I loved it. I loved Circus, and I also kind of loved that I was always the least flexible, weakest person in every troupe I was ever in. And the only thing I had to offer was that I've always really been quite a good performer, like an organic sense of it, and I was fearless. If I stood on if someone was like climb onto my shoulders, I would just climb onto their shoulders, no fear. This person will catch me. I'll be fine. I've fallen. Falling can't be that harmful. I never did flying trapeze as like a job, but I did train on it in the Dominican Republic and a couple of other times throughout my life, and I could not do it right now. Obviously, I'm not strong right now, but I couldn't do it out of that context at all, because the way I did it was that someone would go release and my hands would let go. There was no thinking. Someone would just say, and now you let go and you tuck, and my body would let go and tuck. It would just do what it was told. And that was the advantage I had, was I was like, oh yeah, someone can like tap into my physiology and skip my frontal cortex and just make my body do the acrobatic moves. I loved how quickly the learning curve was too, is of just like, you start working on an acrobatic routine, and pretty quickly you can add new stuff and it can evolve and you get good fast. And who doesn't like working on stuff where they get good at stuff fast? It was really satisfying. And even now, Circus is some of my favorite stuff to watch.
You are in the Guinness Book of World Records for fire eating, correct?
Yes. Yeah, for a particular fighting trick.
Yeah, do tell.
So, when I was doing sideshow, and I really thought, sideshow was going to be my thing. That was, I had studied acrobatics, I had studied juggling, I had studied all this stuff, but I was just so enthralled by sideshow and the history of sideshow. And I've always loved Ripley's Believe It or Not and Guinness Book of World Records. Like, you read those when you're a kid. It occurred to me pretty quickly, like, that's what's done. Like in Magic, if you want to be successful in Magic, often you will just work certain venues and go after certain awards. In Sideshow, you get world records. That's what you do. Um, and so there was already in my head, and then a couple of my friends did this show in Italy, La Show de Record on Channel 4. Uh, they got hired to do this Guinness World Record show, and they were asked if they knew anyone who could do a world record. At the time, it was quite a high level fire eater, uh, pretty well known for doing that, and they recommended I do a fire eating world record. So these TV show people call me. They gave me like 3 or 4 records to pick from. Um, I picked 2. There were 2 different records I was kind of thinking I would try to go after, and one of those 2 was the longest time to hold fire in your teeth, a lit flame in your teeth, which is a trick called a human torch, human candle. So torch teething is what it's listed as in the book of the Guinness Book of World Records. And so I practiced that. I went to Montreal. I had help from a coach. I practiced that one. I practiced the other one. The other one did not happen. They told me the record was 32 seconds. I managed to get the tooth hold up to like 51 seconds. I'm like, I got this. So I called the TV show people. I'm like, hey, I got a 50-second pass. I think we're good to go. Book the plane ticket. So they booked a plane ticket, and I'm all excited. I'm keeping myself kind of trained. I'm doing lots of fire eating gigs to keep myself kind of at the top of my game. And a week before I fly out, I get an email from the TV show. Oh, there was a typo. It's actually not 50. It's not 32 seconds. It's a minute and 32 seconds. And there's no way I can do a minute and 32 seconds of fire in my teeth. That's not humanly possible at the time. So, but I'd never been to Italy, and I wanted to go. And I was like, well, this contract is not, contingent on me actually getting my world record. So Yeah, no problem. So I fly out to Italy. They have a fancy car pick me up. I get taken to this hotel. We spend 2 days doing photo shoots for everybody. And I realize on this particular TV show, there are only two women out of 38 people cast uh, doing world records. There are two other women who are world records. There was the world's smallest girl and the world's most tattooed woman. But there was also like the world's oldest gymnast. She had to do an act, and I was gonna get this fighting world record. So they were explaining to me like there are people who are world records and there are people who do world records. And so the producer comes in at one point and goes, "Hey, we need you to get your world record because we need like female representation, and there's only two, we only have two people, so we need you both to get your records." And I respond, "This conversation is not helpful. I am obviously going to do everything I can to try to do this, but how is you telling me I have to, making it any more likely I will? You're asking me to be the best in the world at something on command. Well, good luck." And so when I had that in my head when went and did our photo shoot, and I burnt my lip a little bit doing the photo shoot for the book. And I'm like, okay, well, now I'm absolutely not going to get the world record. There's no way. I already burnt myself. So the next day, they bring in the studio audience and they put everyone there. And Marco Frigatti, who was our official from Italy, is talking to me and he asks if he can do anything for me. And I was like, you know what? Actually, part of the hardest thing of this is it's very painful. And you have to keep your breathing at a certain pace. And so if you could give me my like 10-second marks, I can count against that. It'll give me a connection to the outside world from outside my body. That'd be helpful. And he goes, absolutely. So, I kneel, I put the fire in my teeth, and I hear Marco count 10 seconds, 20 seconds, 30 seconds, 40 seconds, and then nothing. He stops counting. And so now I'm in my head, and I don't know if it's been 3 minutes or 5 seconds, but it's horribly painful. And I am so mad at Marco Frigatti. I'm so mad at him. You had one job, you this, come on. And so I tried to last as long as I could. I removed the flame from my teeth and did like a little move because I wanted to maintain my pride. And 100% sure, there's no way. Now, I'll remind you, this TV show is being filmed in Italy. So, and I do not speak Italian, despite my fabulous overpronunciation of Marco Frigatti. Um, so I have a little earpiece in my ear, and they have a translator translating everything because we're doing an interview live, and I speak English, and she goes in, she voices over, and she then translates them to my ear. And so I stand up, and there's like a somber vibe, and I'm like, okay, I definitely didn't get it. And so I'm standing there being like, and the translator says in my ear, and a new record is set at 2 minutes and 1 second. And I lose all composure. I'm like, ah! Like there's a clip somewhere online of me just like losing my mind because I was not expecting that. I was not expecting to win and not expecting to beat it by like almost 30 seconds. And it was great. And so, I won. I got to hang out with all the other winners. Like some of the guys from the Harlem Globetrotters were there, and this like cool Bollywood choreographer. And we all went and had tiramisu, and it was so fun. And we wandered around, Rome. It was incredible. And then 6 months later, they aired the TV show. And I see Marco standing there, and he counts 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 a minute, minute 10. And I get to learn in that moment, he counted the whole time. But the pain was so intense that my brain couldn't receive outside stimulus anymore, and I had filtered him out. And
Oh,
so I
wow.
had been mad at him for 6 months over nothing, over absolutely nothing. But it was life changing. First of all, it was a lot of money. It was one of the first times I really negotiated like well for myself and got like a good amount of money. And so suddenly I had like a little bit of spending money, and I applied to go to One Yellow Rabbit's summer theater camp, and I went. I got in. I had to talk them into it, but they let me go. The One Yellow Rabbit lab in Canada is one of, in my opinion, one of the best theatrical programs you can do. Because it's more about theater creation. It's really holistic, lovely program, and I learned so much. And so I was able to pay for that because of that. But also now I had this Guinness World Record, and I was in every newspaper across Canada, and my bio on my website changed, and overnight I went from like this obscure Canadian performer who's like doing okay for themselves to this like national name for a little bit. And they started calling me Canada's sideshow darling, and I booked a cross Canada tour called Canada Sideshow Darling. And so they're the Canadian Sideshow Darling. And so I did this like bar tour. So then when I started doing more character work, I decided that each of the characters would keep the last name of Darling to like preserve that moment, because that was sort of the first time I got any like big status bump. And it went from like, oh yeah, this is how I pay rent, to like, oh, this could be a thing. Like this, I mean, I need to start having some bigger dreams, because I could like make it, I guess.
How many times did you burn yourself preparing for that world record out of curiosity?
Every time. Every time. It is not possible to do that trick and not burn yourself. So I would like train for it, and then I would take 3 days to heal, and then I would train for it, and I'd take 3 days to heal. I burnt myself every single time. It was absolutely miserable.
But what does it feel like for you to know that you are now in the Guinness Book of World Records and you're part of Ripley's Believe It or Not? That's got to be an incredible feeling for you, because there's not a lot of people that can just be able to say, "Oh yeah, I'm in Guinness Book of World Records." I mean, what is that feeling like for you?
So, it okay, here's what I will say. It felt great immediately. And especially the moment for me was when I got into the Ripley's Believe It or Not comic book, when they drew it. That was the moment where I was like, I'm amazing. But the truth is, about all this stuff, like, I just won Stage Magician of the Year at the Magic Castle a second time, and Alan Slater, all this stuff. The truth nobody tells you is that your brain cannot help but move the goalposts. So the second you accomplish something like that, it's great, you're thrilled, and then immediately your brain goes, well, if I got it, it can't really be that difficult. And you find all these ways to sort of discount it. And so, and it was, at this point, it was like 6-7 years ago that I won that. And I did win a couple more Guinness World Records after that, but people only really care about your first world record. So at one point I had 3. I think now I'm back down to like I only have 2 standing records or whatever. But also, who cares? Like it's great, but it's also kind of all meaningless, right? Like the awards, the accomplishments, all that stuff. It's great for selling tickets, but what really matters is how many people laughed in that show, how many people gasped, how many people left saying, I loved that. I love that show. Like that honestly is what means more to me than, oh yeah, a while ago, I'm in the Guinness Book of Records. Cool. But I accomplished it, so it can't really be that difficult.
Well, here's something that I'm very excited to ask you about now. Where did Lucy Darling come from?
Oh, great. So I started doing characters in my kids show to start out with. I saw a lot of other people did like characters in their kids show. A lot of people did clowning. And I was like, that'll be fun for me, and it'll keep it more separate from the adult corporate stuff I do. And then I really enjoyed that, so I started creating these like roving characters. Like Your Fairy Stepmother was originally a roving character. So like these people I would invent. And the more I got into like doing character work, the more it sort of took over. I remember being in a restaurant with my friend John Reed, and there was a woman sitting across from us in a different booth with her friends, and she would have been 55 maybe. All her friends were 55. She had this short little haircut, and she was clearly her kids had just all moved out of the house, and you could hear in the way she was talking this like loneliness and this sorrow, but it was covered by this waspy, she was trying to put on a show for her friends. And she was so fascinating to me to watch, because she didn't know she was doing a character, but she was. And I ate her personality. I just ate it. I just watched her, and then it was mine. And I named the character in my head Diane, and then I created an act where, Diane is this Hi, I'm so excited to be here. My friends are here in the back. Hello, hello. Yes, and also my son, Zachary. Zachary, where are you? Zachary, he's here. Anyway, I just thought, I have this hula hoop and this deck of cards, and I thought, why not? And she's just doing it for the first time. And so it's this act, and you just watch her like fail miserably, and it's delicious, and the audience is so on her side. And so, I've been creating characters forever. And when you start creating characters and it happens more and more, your brain just sort of changes. It sort of works differently. And so it goes from like a very deliberate process of creating a character to you see someone and you just eat their soul. And then sometimes this thing like comes out from your insides. And Lucy was one of those. I had been watching a lot of old timey movies, a lot of Zsa Zsa Gabor, Eartha Kitt, Mae West, Katharine Hepburn, and also I've been watching a lot of Star Trek. And there's Q is in Star Trek, and I love the idea that Q was this lazy, lonely, bored god. And I just thought, what an interesting character as a magician to be like, you're not doing tricks. I'm not performing for you. I'm bored. I'm just doing whatever it takes to elicit a response so that you will feel the need to entertain me. And so I had this idea for this character, but I had not done any characters as a magician because I had been praised quite a bit by the magic community about doing this very serious, authentic magic. And because I have an acting background. And so I could do this, authentic, very serious magic. And so I felt very discouraged. And I told a few people about this idea about Lucy, and everyone was very, no, it's a terrible idea. Magic characters in magic are always a bit cheesy. Don't do it. Okay. And then I was at the Atlanta Harvest convention and I saw Zabrecki perform for the first time. And he was outstanding and it was so inspiring. And he was running a workshop a day after the convention. And I didn't have a ton of money at the time, but I changed my flights and I paid for the extra day and I added a day of hotel and like whatever it took to do this thing. And I went and it was like a day long workshop of character work and stuff like that. And Zabrecki was great. And I pitched this idea as part of the class. And he said, you've got to tell me what happened with that. It's such a cool idea. And that was all of the I needed. I just needed one person to be like, yeah, it's a great idea. You should do that. And so when I got back to Canada, I sent an application into the Melbourne Magic Festival and I started working on it. And I hired an accent coach and the timeline was really crunched, which was great for me to work on it. And once I had the voice, the next thing I realized I needed was the look. And I bought some clothes and I sewed some stuff and it was fine. But really, the moment I had it was when I had the voice and the wig. I went through like 9 wigs to get to that wig. And when I saw the way it made my face small and how drag it was and the sound of her, it was like, yeah, that's who she is. That's what she is. And I didn't have a lot of time to rehearse or to like practice the material before I went to Australia. So I was like just practicing the magic of it and learning the script, but I didn't really have a chance to do the show. I really wanted to premiere it in Australia. And I remember getting to Australia and doing this like burlesque gig right before the festival started because I didn't want the first time I ever did Lucy to be an hour long show. So it's this little burlesque show. And I was like, okay, Lucy will come out and she'll do like a quick card trick and maybe she'll fire eat. And they were like, you have 8 minutes. And it's this incredible burlesque show in Australia called Moulin Beige. By the way, I'd never been to Australia. I didn't know anyone there. That was the whole point because I was pretty sure this was going to be a horrible, miserable failure, and I didn't want anyone to find out. And so I go to this burlesque show, and I'm on like fourth. And the thing that happened before me was a guy who stripped down to an outfit of just kitchen utensils, and he had like a little tiny colander over his penis.
Oh
That
my
was
gosh.
the act that was on before me. And then when I came out there, I saw there was a baby in the audience. And I ceased to exist. And Lucy took over and Lucy improvised 7 minutes about the colander and the baby. And then I remember going, oh, like out of this fugue state, going, I gotta do a trick. And so then I like did a quick little fire eating thing, and walked off stage. And everyone was like, "Whoa, that was amazing!" And I remember sitting backstage, going, "What the hell just happened?" Like I had never done a character that was so strong that like came out of me in that way. Every other character had, when you do a character, you're acting. Like there is a deliberateness about it. You're holding it up the whole time. But immediately with Lucy, it was so easy, like to move into her and to stay in character. And she was such a strong presence, and her motivations were so clear. And then I did the festival, and they had to hold over for extra shows because it kept selling out. And I won the comedy award, and I got booked to the Magic Castle for the first time on that act. And I did the summer tour with the Fringe festivals, and over the course of 6 months, my whole life changed. I went from being this like obscure close-up magician, mostly known for sideshow, to being this entity that everybody was doing interviews with me. Everyone wanted me. I did the lounge for the first time. Like I, it was an overnight success, and I couldn't keep up. Like it was a completely overwhelming experience. Like I was having trouble like juggling my visa at the time because it was a 6 month visa, and I was like, God, how do I get all these gigs in this 6 month period? Um, and a year and a month after that first time, oh no, 2 years and a month after that first time that Zabricki said, "Hey, this is a good idea," I was performing with him at this really great show in Vancouver that he had hired me to do. So I was performing like this opening act for him. And then a year after that, we did like a double act as part of this convention. And it was just so crazy to go from like, this is like my hero. This is the greatest act I've ever seen. And now, like, I feel very comfortable sharing a stage with him in 2 years. It was just the most insane whirlwind of nonsense. And it's still happening. Like, it just keeps blowing up over and over again. And every time I think like, okay, this is the top, I can just coast. Like this is what it was supposed to be. Then just recently I got hired to do the lead for Teatro Zanzani, and I'm like, what the hell? That's my dream gig. So I need a new dream because that was genuinely the craziest thing I could imagine, and now it's just my next contract.
I was recently watching a clip on YouTube of one of your performances at the Magic Castle, where you're performing your routine called a hide and seek. And I remember I'm watching it, and I'm just howling with laughter. To the point where my wife actually walked in and said, "Are you okay?" Because I loved how before the trick even begins, just your way of talking to the crowd and getting to know them and being able to improvise on the spot with these people who you have no idea what they're going to say or how they're going to react to you. How much fun is that to be able to just be that character and let that character take over, especially when you're talking to the crowd and making that connection with them?
It's very fun. But it's also so the effortlessness that you see is an illusion. It is maybe the best trick I do, because when the audience member says something, I am controlling my face. I am deliberately resting my face. I'm neutralizing my face to just look like I'm listening. But what is happening in my brain is like a 90-mile-an-hour calculus situation of, what did he say? What did it sound like? Could Lucy misunderstand that in a funny way? Um, is no words most interesting here? Is like reacting to it the better choice? Can I just do a face? Like right now, I really, really try to do punchlines that are just reactions, because I think that's like this that really shows up. It really draws people in. It asks so little of them. It just invites them into the experience that Lucy's having. I think it builds such empathy for that character. And so I'm a joke writing machine in that moment. I'm coming up with 9 ideas and then selecting an idea, and then I'm still in my body going, oh, because sometimes the idea comes really quickly, and you have to choose to not just blurt it out, because you're like, that guy goes like, oh, I'm a plumber, and you're like, meh. It looks like, oh, that's clearly just a joke they have in their Rolodex. That's clearly something, they say every night. I don't want them to feel that way. I want it to feel like I've never said this before. And so I'm asking myself, does this sound too generic? Blah, blah, blah. But also, I'm letting the audience, I'm acting the moment of hearing him, reacting to hearing him, thinking about it, coming up with the idea, enjoying the idea. So the audience also has a moment of like, oh, she's got something. she's got a little something there, and then I give it to them so that it builds anticipation. So it is fun, but it is also the hardest I'm working in my show. There are like two pieces of sleight of hand in the show that are a bit knuckle busty and like really hard. But the hardest thing in the show is that back and forth improv, because it is I mean, I hold myself to a very high standard, but it also has to be in character, and it also has to support the magic and move the narrative we're creating with the show forward. So in character, but also in world, in universe. Does it make sense that that's how she would feel about that? And then also like making sure that even I'm
Mm.
basically an insult comic. Am I being respectful of people's boundaries? Am I punching down? I mean, there's a reason why I mostly talk to men in the show, because of patriarchy. Can get away with a lot more because it's much more difficult to punch down in those situations. But there's certain people in my show I never call on because I haven't worked out a a humanist. I haven't worked out the most respectful way to like pick on a person like that. Like I'll pick on gay men and gay women all the time because I feel very comfortable, knowing what's appropriate and knowing where the line is with them. But there's certain things where I'm like culturally, I'm like, oh, that's not for me to make a joke about that. That's not my role. That's not for me to touch. And so I might avoid picking certain kinds of people because I wouldn't be able to do as much with them.
Hmm. I've been talking to a lot of improvisers on this podcast, and one thing that we commonly talk about is how when you play a character, that character is you and not you at the same time. So I'm curious, how much of Carissa is in Lucy Darling?
That's a good question. I mean, she is aspects of me. Um she is my frustration. Like that frustration that Lucy has is very much my real frustration. She is my impatience. She is my love, like my truthful, deep, passionate love for the audience. I have so much genuine love for people that choose to spend their time supporting and enjoying live entertainment, who prioritize that. Those are my favorite people. They feed me, they fund me, they laugh at my jokes. Like I have a overwhelming love for them, and that Lucy gets that from me. But her impatience is a little different than my impatience, and her wit and her word choice and her there's tons of stuff I know about that Lucy doesn't know about, and that's one of the hardest things. Is like Lucy doesn't know what a banker is. She doesn't know what an IT professional is. um
Mm.
but I choose to let her know about D&D because I know about D&D. And so if there's a D&D, if someone makes a D&D reference, I love that she just knows everything about D&D. So she knows D&D. But there's lots of times when people will say something and the correct comedy choice, the correct character choice is to not know what they're talking about. And so that's the hardest thing, is her not knowing things I clearly know. And then not accidentally tipping the fact that, oh, I just pretended to not know for the rest of the show. So she is me. She is an aspect. She's picked up aspects of myself. And the thing I also do is there are parts of the show where I am speaking through the character, where the character says something, but it's really me, the artist, saying that thing, and the tone changes. I don't drop character, but you can hear that they're not really Lucy's words. But I don't know. It's. I feel less like it's me and not me. I feel like it really is not me. It was the aspects of Lucy that she has that are mine. Those were chosen 6 years ago when I created her. Now when she goes on stage, it feels so different from me. It feels so separate that sometimes it's really hard to remember what I said, because it feels almost like this person like retreats and goes into more of an editing position, and then Lucy comes to the front and Lucy does the show.
What is your process in creating a routine for Lucy Darling? Like, what do you think about, aside from, how to pull the trick off, what are some of the things that you are processing as you're trying to create a new act for Lucy to do?
Well, let me give you some of the things in my notes app, because here's how everything starts. Is I'll get like a little button of an idea, and then I'll just think about it obsessively for like 9 days. So okay, so here's a note in my app right now of something I'm working on. Shaggy dog joke, but actually it's a trick. Right? What does that mean? I don't even know yet. But I will spend like probably the next 4 days like rolling it over my head and writing out some ideas. The book production routine I have is actually two separate ideas I worked on that then I realized went really well together. So I worked on for like a year and a half. I got this idea of like, oh, how interesting is it that like when a product sucks, a marketer will slap the word magic onto it and then just put it on put it out there, put it on as seen on TV and try to sell it. Magic bullet, magic car wash, magic mark, everything. This magic word is such become such a marketing word. And isn't that so interesting? And what if there was like a fake fight? Like what if magicians were mad that like that word was being watered down? What if I could like pretend that anyway, so I wrote this whole stand-up routine about it. And then I was doing this book production routine that had no routine around it, but it was a great trick. And the original version of that trick was that I say, oh, I think of magic as an art form, and so tonight I'm going to make sure you all learn that magic is an art form, and yeah, but I do need to offer you something as a point of comparison. So I'll begin the act tonight by reading the first 92 pages of Crime and Punishment, and then I would magically produce Crime and Punishment. So, but that's like a throwaway. I wanted to do a whole trick, and when I realized, oh, I've got this good trick, I've got this good concept, they go together. Now it's a full 6-minute routine where I make 2 books appear that I can open a show with if I want. And so a lot of it is just this idea of like it's a little thing will like climb into my brain and I'll just let it roll around and I'll just suck all the creative energy out of it until looking at it doesn't excite me anymore. And then I'll just put it away. And eventually those things will come together. Like I don't put a lot of pressure on myself to write things or to come up with things. I just go where the dopamine is. I just let myself focus on what's interesting. But what I do on top of that is I also ask myself, like, what's missing in the show? What kind of thing structurally do we need that we don't have? Or what kind of trick are we not pursuing? And so, as much as I do kind of let myself run around, if there's something that I go, oh, that actually solves a problem we have, then I will like push myself towards that a little bit more. Like right now, the show's really good. It's really tight. I've got lots of material. I've got 3 full versions of the show, which is great. And I also have a whole separate show that I can do if they lose my luggage out of my carry-on. That show was a show I was really proud of 3 years ago. But I was looking at it like a week and a half ago, and I was like, this is only okay. Like like my stage show now has gotten so much better that this would be such a downgrade to do this show. I do have the material. I could do it. It's a fine show. I would like to get this show closer to where this show is, so it wouldn't feel like such a compromise to do this suitcase show. And so now that's interesting. So now, like this whole idea of like Shaggy Dog, but it's a trick. Whereas I might have instinctively like tried to make that a big stage piece. Now I might go, okay, but is there a way to like do that, answer that question with just a card trick, or answer that question with like something with envelopes? So that's gonna like shape the way I work on that. So it's a combination of goofy, silly nonsense and just playing around, and then also recognizing that like this is my job and I am trying to solve practical problems in my show. So I do need to consider like what is, do we have a strong enough finale? Do we have a strong enough beginning? Is there a trick that teaches people who Lucy are? Is there a trick that teaches the audience how to be the kind of audience that is going to most enjoy the show? Do I have all the elements of the show I want? Great. Do I have 2 of those elements so that I can build a second show that does the same thing? Or do I want to do something different? So, you've got the utility aspect, but then also you've got the like crazy weird artist mind where you're like, I'm just going to think about, I remember I spent 8 days thinking about cutlery and like bar cutlery, like those little twisty spoons. I bought every twisty spoon and bar gadget and bit of nonsense that had ever been made, and I have a full notebook just of like half finished ideas, and I'm doing none of those. But I know at some point I'll go, remember that thing we figured out about the twisty spoon? This is where that goes. So that, it's like a whole brain full of half made sandwiches.
That is awesome. That is awesome. In 2019, you were awarded Magician of the Year by the Magic Castle. That had to have been such a very proud and special moment for you. What is that feeling to, first of all, to just be performing there in the first place, knowing that that's where some of the greats have stepped and performed and have received that same award that you received?
When I did the castle for the first time, I found a little spot. This is the kindest thing I ever did to myself. I found a little spot on the wall and I put my hand there just to like really be present and be like, I made it. I'm performing at the Magic Castle. This is amazing. And every time, and I've worked there like 20 times since then, I put my hand in the same spot to like connect myself to that moment of like, you get to be here. You get to be in this special, incredible place. And it always like makes me want to cry. So to be awarded that award was a huge deal because it's not like three guys in a room picking someone. It is a vote from the entire membership. These are people who had to audition to be members of the castle, who pay dues every year. These are people who see so much magic, who are so well informed, and they all had to decide, I'm the best. So here's how that experience was. We were like early on in the pandemic, and I got this email from Max, and Max Baben and I were very good friends. I considered, in retrospect, I realized how much of a mentor he was, although we wouldn't have used those words for each other at the time. And he had called me a couple days before to say, "Do you want your name on the award, or should it be Lucy's name?" And I went, "Oh, I don't know. What do you think?" And he goes, "Well, it's Lucy's victory. So I think it should be Lucy's name, but it's up to you." And I was like, "No, you're right. It should be Lucy's name." And none of that conversation felt suspicious. Nothing went into my thick noggin. I didn't know I was nominated, whatever. Didn't think there was a chance in holy hell I would win. And I get an email a couple of mornings later from Max, and it says, Magic, and it's a chunk of a paragraph. And I'm reading it, and I'm like, oh, Max wrote this really ambiguously. It reads like I won. People are going to think they won. Like, this is the, oh, sorry you didn't win email, and it looks like I won. And I'm like, I'm going to read it again. I'm even just reading it weird. I read it 4 times, thinking it was just badly written, and I was misreading it. Like, my reading comprehension was bad because it was the first thing I read in the morning. And then it occurred to me, like, oh, God, no, it's me. Okay. And so, at the time, it's a lockdown. There's nowhere to go. We can't celebrate. Nothing to do. So I walk into the other room with my 2 roommates, Richard and Miranda, who were doing the online show with me. And I looked at Richard, like, Miranda wasn't even up yet. And I just said, I think I just won Stage Magician of the Year. And he went, great. Because he's not a magician. He had no idea what that meant. He was like, that's great. And I went, yeah. And then there was like a 3-minute silence. And he goes, do we order cupcakes? And I went, yeah. And then we ordered cupcakes. And then that was the whole victory. Like, there was no party. There was nothing. And it was great. What it did do for me is that I think we all have this little voice in our head that says, I fooled everyone. Like, I'm actually incompetent and I'm a terrible magician. And everyone's just being nice to me so that I don't cry. Like, nobody actually likes my show. And then my brain, for the first time, I had a second voice, and that other voice would go, yeah, but you did win Stage Magician of the Year. So, like, you can't be the worst. You can't literally be the worst. And then, so then they didn't hold the awards the next year because, obviously pandemic. And then they held the awards again for the first time this year. And I got nominated again. So I won last time they did awards. I got nominated this time. There's no way I'm going to win 2 years in a row. That's never, no woman at the Magic Castle, in the history of the Magic Castle, has ever won any award twice in a row, ever. It's never happened. It's not happening this year. And Chuck messages me and goes, hey, are you going to fly out for the awards? And I'm like, I'm not going to fly out. And he's like, we think you should fly out. And I was like, no, I'm doing this show in Pittsburgh. I can't fly out. And he's like, we think you should fly out. We'll get you a hotel. Now I'm like, and then I'm thinking, okay, well, I'm nominated for both Stage Magician of the Year and Lecturer of the Year. So maybe they, that's pretty significant. Maybe they want me there for that. So I fly out and I'm sitting in the audience and I am so convinced I have not won. I have not a speech and I have had too many drinks. And then they announce, I know. Then they announce I've won again. And I was just like, well, fuck. Like, I don't have a speech. So I go up, but it was nice because this time I got to like do the party and the speech and all that, which was so lovely, and I didn't get to have the first time. And my speech, I don't remember it, but mostly my speech was like Simon Cornell had just won for Close Up, who is a good friend of mine, and so I said, ditto what Simon said. Thank you so much. You know, the castle means so much to me, and also huge thanks to the long gone Max Maven who passed away recently. Because if you don't think him on this stage, you're getting super haunted. And then I left because I was like, that's all I got. That's all I got. But it feels amazing to be so beloved by that membership. Like, it's one thing to be respected by your peers. It's another thing to be respected by people that like you feel weird even calling your peers. You know, like the membership of the Magic Castle are elite, accomplished, passionate magicians, and also like some of the most interesting, kind, ambitious, weird people I've ever met. So it's like these are not just my peers; these are like the creme de la creme, and they're like, "You, we pick you. Why? I, why?" Um, yeah. So it's amazing. It is the greatest possible feeling.
That is so amazing. The first time I ever saw you was on Penn and Teller Fool Us. And that's when I was introduced to you. And I think there's a lot of people who that was their first introduction to Lucy. What was that experience like? And I'm happy to finally nerd out with someone who actually did that. So what was that experience like being on Fool Us and trying to fool Penn and Teller?
So I will say my experience is very different than most people's experience. I coach a lot of other people, or not coach so much. It's like I help a lot of other people who do the show now. And watching their experience, I see how different what happened to me was, which was that I got a call the week before. Hey, can you do the show? So a lot of people, 6 months in advance you're doing the show. People have 6 months of rewrites. They write with the producers. They go back and forth. Um, a week before, they're like, "Hey, can you send us your script? We'd love you to do the show." I send them the script. They go, "It's no good," because they had never seen the character really. They didn't. They just were like, "We hear they're great. Hire them." They're like, "We don't like the script. It's confusing." And I was like, "Cool." And I was like, "What do you want?" And they were like, "More funny." And I literally added one joke, and they were like, "It's perfect." Like, okay. And it was genuinely like, "We hate it. It's done." It was because it was a week away. And I didn't have anything because I was between shows, so I didn't have I had the wig with me, but I didn't have the prop. I had the dress, I didn't have the shoes. So I was at Target the day of the shoot, like buying shoes, and in my hotel room building the props. Like I had so there was no time to be nervous. And also, like, I've known Penn for a lot of my life because he's an old sideshow guy, right? So I've known him through the sideshow world. And so I'm not like nervous to perform in front of them, and think in the same way a lot of people were. But what I did get into my head is, wow, Penn has never seen me do this Lucy Darling thing. He knows me as a sideshow guy. So I'm going to go out there and I'm going to fool him into not knowing who I am, and that'll be my whole angle. Is like, oh, I didn't fool you with a trick, but I fooled you with my whole personality. And and I go out and I stand there next to my table and they're setting the shot, and I look over at Penn and he's sitting in his chair and he looks at me and he just sort of nods, and then he gives me a little wave and he looks over at Teller and he goes, "Teller, look, it's Carissa." And I'm like, well, fuck, that was my one angle. And so, like, to me, I had lost even before I started because that was the whole fun of it. And then it was great. Like, the producers were great and it was great to shoot, but it was, it was over. It really was like, you're on there for 6 minutes. It was so fast. It was so nothing. And also, like, it was a big wake up call because when I saw it, it was okay, but I thought I did a way better job than the way it looked when it aired. And I realized, oh, I was performing to the room and ignoring the cameras. Like I hadn't learned to scale Lucy down, and it was a big learning experience to be like, okay, if I want to do TV, I need to learn how to do TV. And then gratefully, we had a global pandemic, and everyone learned how to behave for the camera because you had
That's
to.
true. Hmm.
And so since then, I've done like Masters of Illusion a lot, and I'm really happy with my clips for Masters of Illusion. I mean, no one's super happy with the editing on that show because they have to do a lot of editing, and you people don't, whether it's good or bad doesn't matter. People don't like having their stuff edited, but they do their best. But I'm always really happy with my clips. mostly because I see myself doing a good job of being a TV performer and knowing that's a skill that I've developed in the last 3 years since Penn and Teller. So that's nice.
Carissa, this has been incredibly generous of you, and I just have one final question. And
Sure.
this is the same question that I ask everyone at the end. What's the one piece of advice that has served you well that you'd like everyone else to hear?
That is such a good question. Okay, so this advice came from one of my early mentors. When I was trying to decide, who to be, what to do. This is very early on. But one of the things she said to me is that everyone, and I repeat this all the time. If you've heard me say this, this was not my thing. This is a gift I was given in my early 20s, is that everyone gets to define success for themselves. So I often feel weird that like some awards mean a lot to me, but some awards just don't, and I want them to, and I feel bad about it because I'm like maybe they should give it to someone who would mean more to. And anyway, I have a lot of complex feelings about like external validation, but but it doesn't matter because I get to decide what success looks like for me. And for a lot of my career, success was I want the respect of my peers. I want to be comfortable. I want to have like just enough money that I don't have to worry about money. I want this, I want that. And the more I continue with my career, the truth is like I want like success is I get to go on cool adventures, and on a day-to-day basis I feel good and peaceful and successful, and I just feel that way. Like that's what success is for me. That on the inside of my body, it just feels correct. Like every day I wake up and I go, yeah, this is the thing I'm supposed to be doing, and I'm doing it the way I'm supposed to be doing it. And that was such a great piece of advice because I think part of the trouble with show business is that there is no boss, and it's hard to know when you're doing a good job all the time, and it's hard to people always go like, what's next for you? And I'm like, what are you talking about? What's next for me? This is now. I'm in the now. Like show business is a now thing. And I know so many people are like, oh, one day I want to do a show on Broadway. Well, good for you. You get to define success for yourself. But are you saying that because you genuinely want that and all the things that come with it? Or are you saying that because that seems like the next step? And so it's been such a great thing over the last 20 years in show business to constantly ask myself, is this success for me? Is this how I define success? Is this going to feel like it's for me? And if it's not, that's also okay. It's totally okay for it to just not be for me.
Hmm. Great piece of advice. Carissa, thank you so much for being so generous with your time, and I wish you so much success and much love to you and everything else that comes for you moving forward.
Thank you. It's so kind. This was so much fun. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Absolutely incredible. You know, what she said is so correct. Define success as it relates to you. This is a lesson I'm constantly learning and relearning for myself, and it's so great to get that reminder. Thank you, Carissa, for spending this time with me and for being such a kind and lovely person. My friends, please visit her website, CarissaHendrix.com, to learn more about Carissa, see photos and videos, and to find out about her tour schedule and for show bookings. And also check out her YouTube channel, Carissa Hendrix, to watch some of her amazing performances. And while you're on YouTube, you can also visit my channel called LD Madeira Magic to check out some of my magic performances. And don't forget to visit togetherbymyself.com to learn about my solo improv show. If you're enjoying this podcast, and I hope you are, feel free to leave a review and share this with your friends who enjoy improv, magic, or just like listening to podcasts in general. I always enjoy spending this time with you, my friends. I hope you do too, and I'll catch you next time right here on Improv and Magic.